Patrice Lumumba. Article talk. Language. Download PDF. Watch. Edit. Lumumba. Redirects here. For other uses, see Lumumba disambiguation. Patrice Amory Lumumba Patrice LMM, IPTRESS LUMUUMB. 3. Born Isaiah Tasumbutawosa, 4. The 2nd of July 1925 to the 17th of January 1961, was a Congolese politician, independence leader and revolutionary. Following his party's success in the first general election in an independent Congo, Lumumba serving as first prime minister of the First Congolese Republic, the modern-day Democratic Republic of the Congo, from June 17, 1960 until September 1960. 5. 6. Lumumba was the leader of the Congolese National Movement, MNC, from 1958 until his assassination in 1961. Ideologically an African nationalist and Pan-Africanist, he played a significant role in the transformation of the Congo from a colony of Belgium into an independent republic. 7. Patrice Lumumba. Lumumba in 1960. First Prime Minister of the Democratic Republic of the Congo. In office. The 24th of June 1960 to the 5th of September 1960 A. President. Joseph Kasavubu. Deputy. Antoine Gizenga. Preceded by. Office established. Succeeded by. Joseph Ileo. First Minister of National Defense. In office. The 24th of June 1960 to the 5th of September 1960. Prime Minister. Himself. Preceded by. Office established. Succeeded by. Ferdinand Kazadi B. Personal details. Born. Isaiah Tasumbutawosa. The 2nd of July 1925. Katakokom, Congo Kasai, Belgian Congo C. Died. The 17th of January 1961, aged 35. Near Elisabethville, state of Katanga D. Cause of death. Assassination by firing squad. Party. MNC. Spouses. Henriette Malatawa. M. 1945. Div. 1947. Hortense Samboja. M. 1947. Div. 1951. Pauline Opengo M. 1951. Children. Francois Lumumba. Guy Patrice Lumumba. Roland Gilbert Lumumba 1. Juliana Lumumba 1. Marie-Christine Lumumba 1. Shortly after Congolese independence was established in June 1960, the dissolution of the democratically elected Congress by then-President Joseph Kasavubu, followed by a mutiny led by Joseph Désiré Mobutu, a former Force Publique FP, marked the beginning of the Congo crisis. 6. Lumumba attempted to escape to Stanleyville to join his supporters who had established a new anti-Mobutu state called the Free Republic of the Congo, but Lumumba was captured en route by state authorities under Mobutu, and sent to Elisabethville in the state of Katanga. 8. Alongside Belgian mercenaries, he was tortured and later executed by the separatist Katangan authorities of Moise Tshombe. His body was later dissolved in acid. 9. In 2002, Belgium formally apologized for its role in the execution, admitting moral responsibility. 10. 11. In 2022, Lumumba's tooth was returned by the Belgian government to his family. 12. 13. He is widely considered a martyr for colonial liberation and the Pan-African movements. 14. Early life and career. Edit. Photograph of Lumumba, circa 1950s. Patrice Lumumba was born on the 2nd of July 1925 as Isaiah Tasumbutawosa to Julienne Wamato Lomenja and her husband, Francois Talenga Otechima, a farmer, in Onalua, in the Katakokom region of the Kasai province of the Belgian Congo. 15. 16. He was a member of the Tetela ethnic group, where he was referred to with the name Elias Okatasambo. 17. 18. 19. His original surname means, heir of the cursed, and is derived from the Tetela words Okita Okat heir, successor, 20, and Asambo cursed or bewitched people who will die quickly. 21. He had 3 brothers, Charles Lakalonga, Emile Kalema, and Louis Onma Payne Lumumba, and one half-brother, Jean Talenga. 15. Raised in a Catholic family, he was educated at a Protestant primary school, a Catholic missionary school, and finally the government post office training school, where he passed the 1-year course with distinction. He was known for being a vocal, precocious young man, regularly pointing out the errors of his teachers in front of his peers. 22. This outspoken nature would come to define his life and career. Lumumba spoke Tetela, French, Lingala, Swahili, and Shaluba. 15. Outside of his regular studies, Lumumba took an interest in the Enlightenment ideals of Jean-Jacques Rousseau and Voltaire. He was also fond of Molière and Victor Hugo. He wrote poetry, and many of his works had anti-imperialist themes. 23. He worked as a traveling beer salesman in Leopoldville and as a postal clerk in Stanleyville for 11 years. 24. Lumumba married 3 times. He married his first wife Henriette Malatawa a year after arriving in Stanleyville in 1945. They divorced in 1947. In the same year, he married Hortense Samboja, but this relationship also fell apart and they divorced in 1951. He began an affair with Pauline Kai while still married to Hortense. While he had no children with his first 2 wives, his relationship with Kai resulted in a son, Francois Lumumba. Though he remained close with Kai until his death, Lumumba ultimately ended their affair to marry Pauline Opengu in 1951, who was 14 years old at the time. 1. In the period following World War II, young leaders across Africa increasingly worked for national goals and independence from the colonial powers. 24. In 1952 he was hired to work as a personal assistant for French sociologist Pierre Clement, who was performing a study of Stanleyville. 25. That year he also co-founded and subsequently became president of a Stanleyville chapter of the Association des Anciens Élèves des Pères de Chute Adapés, an alumni association for former students at Chute schools, even though he had never attended one. 26. In 1955, Lumumba became regional head of the Cercles of Stanleyville and joined the Liberal Party of Belgium. He edited and distributed party literature. Between 1956 and 1957 he wrote his autobiography, which was published posthumously in 1962. 27. Unreliable source. After a study tour in Belgium in 1956, he was arrested on charges of embezzlement of $2,500. 24. From the post office. He was convicted and sentenced 1 year later to 12 months imprisonment and a fine. 2. Leader of the MNC. Edit. See also. Movement National Congolais. Lumumba in 1958. After his release, Lumumba helped found the Movement National Congolais (MNC) party in 1958 and quickly became the organization's leader. 23. The MNC, unlike other Congolese parties developing at the time, did not draw on a particular ethnic base. 28. It promoted a platform that included independence, gradual Africanization of the government, state-led economic development, and neutrality in foreign affairs. Lumumba had a large popular following. 28, and as a result, he had more political autonomy than contemporaries who were more dependent on Belgian connections. 29. Lumumba was one of the delegates who represented the MNC at the All-African People's Conference in Accra, Ghana, in December 1958. At this international conference, hosted by Ghanaian President Kwame Nkrumah, Lumumba further solidified his Pan-Africanist credentials. Nkrumah was personally impressed by Lumumba's intelligence and ability. 30. In 1959, the MNC split into the majority MNCL, led by Lumumba, and the more radical and federalist MNCK. In late October 1959, Lumumba, as leader of the MNC, was arrested for inciting an anti-colonial riot in Stanleyville during which 30 people were killed. He was sentenced to 6 months in prison. The trial's start date of the 18th of January 1960 was the first day of the Congolese Round Table Conference in Brussels, intended to make a plan for the future of the Congo. Despite Lumumba's imprisonment, the MNC won a convincing majority in the December local elections in the Congo. As a result of strong pressure from delegates upset by Lumumba's trial, he was released and allowed to attend the Brussels conference. Citation needed. Independence and election as Prime Minister. Edit. See also. 1960 Belgian Congo general election and formation of the Lumumba government. Lumumba pictured in Brussels at the Round Table Conference with other members of the MNCL delegation, the 26th of January 1960. The conference culminated on the 27th of January 1960 with a declaration of Congolese independence. It set the 30th of June 1960 as the independence date with national elections to be held from 11 to the 25th of May 1960. The MNC won a plurality in the election. 6 weeks before the date of independence, Walter Ganshoff van der Meersch was appointed as the Belgian Minister of African Affairs. He lived in Leopoldville, in effect becoming Belgium's de facto resident minister in the Congo, administering it jointly with Governor-General Hendrik Cornelis. 31. He was charged with advising King Baudouin on the selection of a formateur. 32. On the 8th of June 1960, Ganshoff flew to Brussels to meet with Baudouin. He made 3 suggestions for formature: Lumumba, as the winner of the elections; Joseph Kasavubu, the only figure with a reliable national reputation who was associated with the coalescing opposition, or some to be determined third individual who could unite the competing blocs. 33. Ganshof returned to the Congo on the 12th of June 1960. The following day he appointed Lumumba to serve as the delegate informateur tasked with investigating the possibility of forming a national unity government that included politicians with a wide range of views, with the 16th of June 1960 as his deadline. 34. The same day as Lumumba's appointment, the parliamentary opposition coalition, the Cartel d'Union Nationale, was announced. 35. Though Kasavubu was aligned with their beliefs, he remained distanced from them. The MNCL was also having trouble securing the allegiances of the PSA, CEREA, Centre de Regroupement Africain, and Balubakat, Association Générale des Baluba du Katanga. 36. Initially, Lumumba was unable to establish contact with members of the cartel. Eventually, several leaders were appointed to meet with him, but their positions remained entrenched. On the 16th of June 1960, Lumumba reported his difficulties to Ganshof, who extended the deadline and promised to act as an intermediary between the MNCL leader and the opposition. 37. Once Ganshof had made contact with the cartel leadership, he was impressed by their obstinacy and assurances of a strong anti-Lumumba polity. By evening, Lumumba's mission was showing even less chance of succeeding. Ganshof considered extending the role of informateur to Cyril Adula and Kasavubu, but faced increasing pressure from Belgian and moderate Congolese advisors to end Lumumba's assignment. 38. The following day, on the 17th of June 1960, Ganshof declared that Lumumba had failed and terminated his mission. 36. Acting on Ganshof's advice, Baudouin then named Kasavubu formateur. 39. Lumumba responded by threatening to form his own government and present it to parliament without official approval. 36. He called a meeting at the OK Bar in Leopoldville, where he announced the creation of a popular government with the support of Pierre Mulele of the PSA. Meanwhile, Kasavubu, like Lumumba, was unable to communicate with his political opponents. 40. He assumed that he would secure the presidency, so he began looking for someone to serve as his prime minister. Most of the candidates he considered were friends who had foreign support similar to his own, including Albert Kalanji, Joseph Ileo, Cyril Adula, and Justin Bomboko. Kasavubu was slow to come to a final decision. 39. On the 18th of June 1960, Kasavubu announced that he had completed his government with all parties except the MNCL. That afternoon, Jason Sendwa, Antoine Gizenga, and Anisit Kashimura announced in the presence of Lumumba that their respective parties were not committed to the government. The next day, on the 19th of June 1960, Ganshof summoned Kasavubu and Lumumba to a meeting so they could forge a compromise. This failed when Lumumba flatly refused the position of prime minister in a Kasavubu government. 41. The following day, on the 20th of June 1960, the two rivals met in the presence of Adula and diplomats from Israel and Ghana, but no agreement was reached. 41. Most party leaders refused to support a government that did not include Lumumba. 42. The decision to make Kasavubu the formateur was a catalyst that rallied the PSA, CEREA, and BALUBAKAT to Lumumba, making it unlikely that Kasavubu could form a government that would survive a vote of confidence. When the chamber met, on the 21st of June 1960, to select its officers, Joseph Kasongo of the MNCL was elected president with 74 votes, a majority, while the two vice presidencies were secured by the PSA and CEREA candidates, both of whom had the support of Lumumba. 36. With time running out before independence, Baudouin took new advice from Ganshof and appointed Lumumba as formateur. 39. Lumumba left center poses with his government outside the Palais de la Nation immediately following its investiture. Once it was apparent that Lumumba's bloc controlled parliament, several members of the opposition became eager to negotiate for a coalition government in order to share power. 43. By the 22nd of June 1960, Lumumba had a government list, but negotiations continued with Jean Bolikongo, Albert Delvaux, and Kasavubu. Lumumba reportedly offered the alliance of Bakongo Abako the ministerial positions for foreign affairs and middle classes, but Kasavubu instead demanded the Ministry of Finance, a Minister of State, the Secretary of State for the Interior, and a written pledge of support from the MNCL and its allies for his presidential candidacy. 44 Kalanji was presented with the agriculture portfolio by Lumumba, which he rejected, although he was suitable due to his experience as an agricultural engineer. 45 Adula was also offered a ministerial position, but refused to accept it. 46. By the morning of the 23rd of June 1960, the government was, in the words of Lumumba, practically formed. At noon, he made a counter-offer to Kasavubu, who instead responded with a letter demanding the creation of a seventh province for the Bakongo. Lumumba refused to comply and instead pledged to support Jean Boulikongo in his bid for the presidency. 47. At 1445, Lumumba presented his proposed government before the press. Neither the ABAKO nor the MNC Kalanji (MNCK) were represented among the ministers, and the only PSA members were from Gizenga's wing of the party. The Bakongo of Leopoldville were deeply upset by their exclusion from Lumumba's cabinet. They subsequently demanded the removal of the PSA-dominated provincial government and called for a general strike to begin the following morning. At 1600, Lumumba and Kasavubu resumed negotiations. Kasavubu eventually agreed to Lumumba's earlier offer, though Lumumba informed him that he could not give him a guarantee of support in his presidential candidacy. 47. The resulting 37-strong Lumumba government was very diverse, with its members coming from different classes, different tribes, and holding varied political beliefs. 48. Though many had questionable loyalty to Lumumba, most did not openly contradict him out of political considerations or fear of reprisal. 49. At 22:40 on the 23rd of June 1960, the Chamber of Deputies convened in the Palais de la Nation to vote on Lumumba's government. After Kasongo opened the session, Lumumba delivered his main speech, 50, promising to maintain national unity, abide by the will of the people, and pursue a neutralist foreign policy. 51. It was warmly received by most deputies and observers. 50. Lumumba waving to supporters, circa 1960. The chamber proceeded to engage in a heated debate. 50. Though the government contained members from parties that held 120 of the 137 seats, reaching a majority was not a straightforward task. While several leaders of the opposition had been involved in the formative negotiations, their parties as a whole had not been consulted. Furthermore, some individuals were upset that they had not been included in the government and sought to personally prevent its investiture. 52. In the subsequent arguments, multiple deputies expressed dissatisfaction at the lack of representation of their respective provinces and/or parties, with several threatening secession. Among them was Kalanji, who said he would encourage people of Kasai to refrain from participating in the central government and form their own autonomous state. One Katanja's deputy objected to the same person being appointed as premier and as head of the defense portfolio. 53. When a vote was finally taken, only 80 of the 137 members of the chamber were present. Of these, 74 voted in favor of the government, 5 against, and 1 abstained. The 57 absences were almost all voluntary. Though the government had earned just as many votes as when Kasongo won the presidency of the chamber, the support was not congruent. Members of Cleopas Comitatus wing of the PSA had voted against the government while a few members of the PNP, Puna, and ABAKO voted in favor of it. Overall, the vote was a disappointment for the MNCL coalition. 54. The session was adjourned at 2:05 on the 24th of June 1960. 46. The Senate convened that day to vote on the government. There was another heated debate, in which Ileo and Adula expressed their strong dissatisfaction with its composition. 46. Confederation of Tribal Associations of Katanga Kanakit members abstained from voting. When arguments concluded, a decisive vote of approval was taken on the government. 60 voted in favor, 12 against, while 8 abstained. All dissident arguments for alternative cabinets, particularly Kalanji's demand for a new administration, were rendered impotent, and the Lumumba government was officially invested. 55. With the institution of a broad coalition, the parliamentary opposition was officially reduced to only the MNCK and some individuals. 56. At the onset of his Lumumba had two main goals: to ensure that independence would bring a legitimate in the quality of life for the Congolese, and to unify the country as a centralized state by eliminating tribalism and regionalism. 57. He was worried that opposition to his government would appear rapidly and would have to be managed quickly and decisively. 58. To achieve the first aim, Lumumba believed that comprehensive Africanization of the administration, in spite of its risks, would be necessary. 59. The Belgians were opposed to such an idea, as it would create inefficiency in the Congo's bureaucracy and lead to a mass exodus of unemployed civil servants to Belgium, whom they would be unable to absorb into the government there. 60. It was too late for Lumumba to enact Africanization before independence. Seeking another gesture that might excite the Congolese people, Lumumba proposed to the Belgian government a reduction in sentences for all prisoners and an amnesty for those serving a term of 3 years or less. Ganshoff feared that such an action would jeopardize law and order, and he evaded taking any action until it was too late to fulfill the request. Lumumba's opinion of the Belgians was soured by this affair, which contributed to his fear that independence would not appear real to the average Congolese. 59. In seeking to eliminate tribalism and regionalism in the Congo, Lumumba was deeply inspired by the personality and undertakings of Kwame Nkrumah and by Ghanaian ideas of the leadership necessary in post-colonial Africa. He worked to seek such changes through the MNC. Lumumba intended to combine it with its parliamentary allies, CEREA, the PSA, and possibly VALUBAKAT, to form one national party, and to build a following in each province. He hoped it would absorb other parties and become a unifying force for the country. '59. The independence ceremony for the Congo, held on the 30th of June 1960, at which Lumumba delivered his independence speech. Independence Day was celebrated on the 30th of June 1960 in a ceremony attended by many dignitaries, including King Baudouin of Belgium and the foreign press. 61. Baudouin's speech praised developments under colonialism, his reference to the genius of his great-granduncle Leopold II of Belgium, glossing over atrocities committed during his reign over the Congo Free State. 62. The king continued, "Don't compromise the future with hasty reforms, and don't replace the structures that Belgium hands over to you until you are sure you can do better. Don't be afraid to come to us. We will remain by your side, give you advice." 62. Lumumba, who had not been scheduled to speak, delivered an impromptu speech that reminded the audience that the independence of the Congo had not been granted magnanimously by Belgium. 61. For this independence of the Congo, although being proclaimed today by agreement with Belgium, an amicable country, with which we are on equal terms, no Congolese worthy of the name will ever be able to forget that it was by fighting that it has been won, a day-to-day fight, an ardent and idealistic fight, a fight in which we were spared neither privation nor suffering, and for which we gave our strength and our blood. We are proud of this struggle, of tears, of fire, and of blood, to the depths of our being, for it was a noble and just struggle, and indispensable to put an end to the humiliating slavery which was imposed upon us by force. '63. Most European journalists were shocked by the stridency of Lumumba's speech. '64. The Western media criticized him. Time magazine characterized his speech as a vicious attack. '65. Prime Minister. Edit. Independence. Edit. Every morning at 7 o'clock he sat at the huge desk, embellished with the forgotten coat of arms of colonial Belgium, a golden lion in a blue shield. There the premier first received his immediate assistance, set up the schedule for the day, went over correspondence, which he answered. Without a stop until evening he was receiving salesmen, petitioners, donors, experts, businessmen, and diplomats, the most variegated crowd that ever walked on the market. Everybody wanted to deal exclusively with Lumumba. Prime Minister's Press Secretary Serge Michel, 66. Independence Day and the 3 days that followed it were declared a national holiday. 67. The Congolese were preoccupied by the festivities, which were conducted in relative peace. '68. Meanwhile, Lumumba's office was overtaken by a flurry of activity. A diverse group of individuals, Congolese and European, some friends and relatives, hurried about their work. Some undertook specific missions on his behalf, sometimes without direct permission. 69. Numerous Congolese citizens showed up at the office at whim for various reasons. 70. Lumumba, for his part, was mostly preoccupied with a lengthy itinerary of receptions and ceremonies. '71. On the 3rd of July Lumumba declared a general amnesty for prisoners, but it was never implemented. '72. The following morning he convened the Council of Ministers to discuss the unrest among the troops of the Force Publique. '73. Many soldiers hoped that independence would result in immediate promotions and material gains, but were disappointed by Lumumba's slow pace of reform. The rank and file felt that the Congolese political class, particularly ministers in the new government, were enriching themselves while failing to improve the troops' situation. Many of the soldiers were also fatigued from maintaining order during the elections and participating in independence celebrations. '74. The ministers decided to establish 4 committees to study, respectively, the reorganization of the administration, the judiciary, and the army, and the enactment of a new statute for state employees. All were to devote special attention to ending racial discrimination. 75 Parliament assembled for the first time since independence and took its first official legislative action by voting to increase the salaries of its members to FC 500,000. Lumumba, fearing the repercussions the raise would have on the budget, was among the few to object, dubbing it a ruinous folly. 76-77. Outbreak of the Congo crisis. Edit. Official portrait of Lumumba as Prime Minister of the Republic of the Congo, 1960. On the morning of the 5th of July 1960, General Émile Janssens, commander of the Force Publique, in response to increasing excitement among the Congolese ranks, summoned all troops on duty at Camp Leopold II. He demanded that the army maintain its discipline and wrote, "Before independence equals after independence," on a blackboard for emphasis. That evening the Congolese sacked the canteen in protest of Janssens. He alerted the reserve garrison of Camp Hardy, 95 miles away in Thiesville. The officers tried to organize a convoy to send to Camp Leopold II to restore order, but the men mutinied and seized the armory. '78 The crisis which followed came to dominate the tenure of the Lumumba government. '79 The next day Lumumba dismissed Janssens and promoted all Congolese soldiers one grade, but mutinies spread out into the lower Congo. '80 Although the trouble was highly localized, the country seemed to be overrun by gangs of soldiers and looters. Clarification needed. The media reported that Europeans were fleeing the country. 81 page needed. In response, Lumumba announced over the radio, thoroughgoing reforms are planned in all sectors. My government will make every possible effort to see that our country has a different face in a few months, a few weeks. In spite of government efforts, the mutinies continued. 82 mutineers in Leopoldville and Thiesville surrendered only upon the personal intervention of Lumumba and President Kasavubu. 83 On the 8th of July, Lumumba renamed the Force Publique as the Armée Nationale Congolaise, ANC. He Africanized the force by appointing Sergeant Major Victor Lundula as General and Commander-in-Chief, and chose Junior Minister and former soldier Joseph Mobutu as Colonel and Army Chief of Staff. These promotions were made in spite of Lundula's inexperience and rumors about Mobutu's ties to Belgian and U.S. intelligence services. '84 All European officers in the army were replaced with Africans, with a few retained as advisors. By the next day, the mutinies had spread throughout the entire country. 85 Europeans, including the Italian vice-consul, were ambushed and killed by machine gun fire in Elisabethville, and nearly the entire European population of Luluaburg barricaded itself in an office building for safety. 85 An estimated 24 Europeans were murdered in the mutiny. 86 Lumumba and Kasavubu embarked on a tour across the country to promote peace and appoint new army commanders. 85. Belgium intervened on the 10th of July, dispatching 6,000 troops to the Congo, ostensibly to protect its citizens from the violence. Most Europeans went to Katanga province, which possessed much of the Congo's natural resources. 2. Though personally angered, Lumumba condoned the action on the 11th of July, provided that the Belgian forces acted only to protect their citizens, followed the direction of the Congolese armed forces, and ceased their activities once order was restored. 82, 83, 86. The same day the Belgian Navy bombarded Matadi after it had evacuated its citizens, killing 19 Congolese civilians. This greatly inflamed tensions, leading to renewed Congolese attacks on Europeans. Shortly thereafter, Belgian forces moved to occupy cities throughout the country, including the capital, where they clashed with Congolese soldiers. 83 additional citations needed. On the whole, the Belgian intervention made the situation worse for the armed forces. 86. The state of Katanga declared independence under regional premier Moise Chom on the 11th of July, with support from the Belgian government and mining companies such as Union Miniere. Lumumba and Kasavubu were denied use of Elisabethville's airstrip the following day and returned to the capital, only to be accosted by fleeing Belgians. 88 They sent a protest of the Belgian deployment to the United Nations, requesting that they withdraw and be replaced by an international peacekeeping force. The UN Security Council passed United Nations Security Council Resolution 143, calling for the immediate removal of Belgian forces and establishment of the United Nations operation in the Congo ONUC. Despite the arrival of UN troops, unrest continued. Lumumba requested UN troops to suppress the rebellion in Katanga, but the UN forces were not authorized to do so under their mandate. On the 14th of July, Lumumba and Kasavubu broke off diplomatic relations with Belgium. Frustrated at dealing with the West, they sent a telegram to Soviet Premier Nikita Khrushchev, requesting that he closely monitor the situation in the Congo. '89. Visit to the United States. Edit. Lumumba arriving in New York City, the 24th of July 1960. Lumumba decided to travel to New York City in order to personally express the position of his government to the United Nations. 90 Shortly before his departure, he announced that he had signed an economic agreement with a U.S. businessman who had created the Congo International Management Corporation (CIMCO). According to the contract, which had yet to be ratified by Parliament, CIMCO was to form a development corporation.